Hi, this is Gayle from BERNINA of Naperville, and it's time to surge again for our Bloom and Grow Surge Along. So come on and join me because this month it's a lot of fun and we get to do a lot of strange, unusual, fun, and practical techniques. Let's get started. All right. Well, welcome to lesson 7 of our Bloom and Grow Surge Along. Now, this Surge Along, if you don't know, is around a quilt that was designed by Amanda Murphy for BERNINA of America. And it is available as a free kit and project with the BERNINA L890 Quilters Edition serger. But you can do this project on any overlocker machine with a separate cover stitch machine, or even the Burnett cover and serger machine combinations or whatever. I'm going to be using a BERNINA L890 regular edition this month to assemble our sections. Like I mentioned, this project was put together by BERNINA of America, and their videos live on the BERNINA Skill Hub. Now, the BERNINA Skill Hub is a direct to customers like you education platform where you can purchase classes and watch them virtually on your own time. And the BERNINA Skill Hub has tons of other classes and things like that. So it's really nice to check out. But you're going to get the meat and potatoes of this whole encompassing quilt from that platform. BERNINA of Naperville, us, we, me, puts together our own little tips and tricks and handouts every month to assist you with this. It's not meant to replace what BERNINA has done. It's just something to enhance. With that in mind, you can see here we are already on lesson 7. So we have gotten quite into this quilt already. And what I'm working from is a presentation deck that you would get if you wanted to sign up for the supplements from BERNINA of Naperville. And our kits are gone. We unfortunately just do not have the supplies to make any more. We did send a whole bunch of them out there. And for those of you watching that have gotten a kit from us, thank you very much. And hope you're having a good time with this Surge Along. So we are on, like I said, month 8, which means we're going to be doing the flying geese units. And what does this mean? Or how do I use the BERNINA of Naperville videos? Or what is going on here? Well, our Surge Along is done quilt as you go. So the first thing that you're going to want to do this month is go to the BERNINA Skill Hub and watch the Bloom and Grow videos presented by Mary Beck. And you're going to watch Chapter 2 in the Bloom and Grow Skill Hub course, which deals with the flying geese blocks. And then next month, I'll meet you back here. And then we're going to attach what we make this month to our piece that we've already created. And I did mention that it's quilt as you go. And what we do is we make a section, then the next month we quilt it, and then we go make another section and so forth. But these are our embellished flying geese units. These are the sections for our quilt as you go project. So we have done everything up until this outline of green here. You can see our flying geese blocks there. And this is the last portion in our Quilt As You Go section number 1. Then we'll head on to section number 2, and then finally we will do section number 3. And then we do have a class that will be geared around putting it all together and binding it. So in this class, we're going to need the 60 weight Metler cotton thread for piecing that's found in your kit. And we're also going to need the Glamour thread, which is like this metallic 12 weight thread from Wonderfil that came in your thread kit, as well as the light and dark 12 weight spaghetti. And we're going to do that for cover stitching and for chain stitching. There's a lot of other supplies that you're going to need. We are going to need a clover seam guide. I kind of see this as something nice to have, but it's not crucial. The metal cover stitch lock tool is a little bit different than the one that comes with your L890 because it's all metal versus the one that comes with your machine is plastic. The metal doesn't allow you to get the grooves through it because I really pull my thread again and again and again, and the metal one seems to hold up a little bit for me. We're going to be doing some thread blending, and the thread fusion bits are awesome because it allows you to put multiple spools on one spool. It's kind of like a multiple spool holder for your serger rather than your sewing machine. Fabric marking pen, these seam guides that are available. Now, if you have a Bernina walking foot, you can use the walking foot seam guides. But if you are somebody that got an L890 early on and you haven't done so yet, you will need to get a new shank to hold the seam guides. And then we're going to be using our clear foot number 27, and you can see it right there. And that's basically because we're going to do some stitching where we want to line it up with a drawn line, and that clear foot really helps us see things a little bit better. For this lesson, we have 3 fabrics that we're working with. We have our gray fabric C, and that is what we're going to be doing our cover stitch on. And then fabric D is our little half square triangles that are going to be on our flying geese units. And then we have this light blue strip, but that we are actually going to hold on to until next month. So we have some preparation. So first, we're going to press our fabrics for this lesson because, you know, you put them in a little Ziploc bag and then you pull them out and they're a little bit wrinkly. So you want to make sure you press everything. And we're going to set up the L890, in my case, for a 3-thread wide cover stitch. Now, here's some exciting news. We are going to use 2 threads through the cover stitch looper. And you can see here on the diagram to the right here that, yes, you can put 2 heavy threads in there through 1 looper path. This is a fun way to enhance anything, not just a quilt, because what you make with this blended thread really looks like some kind of trim that you might sew on something. So you can take this into all facets of sewing. So with this thread, though 2 threads through 1 looper, it's really hard to blow it through the air threading mechanism because it's just a little bit too thick to really suck that thread through. So you're going to need to make a thread cradle. And basically what you do with that is you can take any thread, like regular sewing thread, like your Ceracore thread or this Metler 50 weight poly that I have here. So I'm cutting that about a yard long and folding it in half. And then I stick my raw ends into the cover stitch looper, set my machine up for threading, and blow it through, holding the little loop with my pinky finger. Then I'm pulling my 2 threads through that and then manually pulling that little thread cradle I made through the machine to thread it. I am using size 80 ELX needles in my machine, and those you can thread with the light gray Ceracore that came with your L890, or you can also use the white Metler cotton thread, but I decided that I wanted to use a teal thread that kind of matches my thread a little bit more. So once you get your machine threaded, just always make sure that you do a practice piece so that you can make sure everything looks good. When I did my first row on my practice, I discovered that I didn't have my needles high enough inserted into my machine, and it caused some skip stitches. So it's always good to do a practice piece before you pull out the precious stuff. Like I mentioned, we're going to be using that clear number C27 foot, and we're going to mark the center of each of these long gray strips of fabric. And you can do it by creasing like Mary did, or you can use a fabric marker to mark the design on the fabric. But make sure you mark it on the wrong side because we're actually making this stitch upside down. The magic is going to happen under the fabric. So we want the right side of the fabric placed against that free arm of the machine for this. And just a little bit of housekeeping when I do a cover stitch like this, I like to make sure that I'm always starting on the fabric. And then at the end, that's when I'm using that cover stitch locking tool to secure the stitches. So I just chain stitch my 2 long pieces by doing this embellishment stitch right down the middle of them. Then I'm going to cut them apart, and then I'm going to use those walking foot guides. And I use the walking foot guide. It's actually set to be 1.25 inches away from the edge of my chain stitch. And I like to use the seam guide set on the right of my work. So I put my seam guide right on that line that's closest to me from my chain stitching. And then I just sew down one side, pull my threads to cut with my locking tool, then turn around and go back down the other side. And I just have to do that twice. And then I can just remove my seam guide and remove the left cover needle and rethread my cover stitch looper with just my light color spaghetti. And I set up my machine for a 2-thread chain stitch. And that's the 2-thread chain stitch number 16. And I can just line the foot up in the middle of 2 of my cover stitches. And of course, I will do this on both of my long pieces. When it comes to making the flying geese units, we then take our strips and we're going to trim them down to 4.5 by 8.5 inch strips. I preferred to cut my strips 4.5 inches and then cut them into 8.5 inch units, but Mary does it the opposite. She cuts all the 8.5 inch segments and then centers up each one of those to make sure that it's exactly 4.5 inches wide. And you can do it however you want. And then with all of those little 16-inch squares that you've cut that are 4.5 inches on the back side of the fabric or the wrong side of the fabric, you're going to draw a line from corner to corner. And this line is what you're going to stitch on exactly. So we have a little bit of a thread change for this. We're going to change the top and bottom thread for sure this time to the white 60 weight Metler cotton thread. We're going to do a little bit of something different. We're actually going to engage that knife, and then we're going to sew right on that drawn line, and we're cutting the excess off as we stitch. And for this reason, we're going to keep that clear number 27 foot on our machine. Now, I took a Sharpie and marked on that clear foot where my needle position is, because there's 3 little ticks for the cover stitching needles, left cover, center cover, and right cover. So I marked it on that right cover bump right in front of the needle so I could align that right down my stitch. And also, I want you to notice that I actually sew off with my chain stitching. I can just sew, and I don't even need any fabric under it. This is invaluable when you are trying to speed piece. And I love this method for just simply piecing quilts on my serger, regardless if it's for this Bloom and Go project or not. And then you're going to do all of the triangles on one side. And then after you trim and press, you're going to add the other triangles to the other side. And another difference that I did for Mary is I did not press my seams open. I pressed them to the side. And then finally, we're going to set up our machine for a 1/4 inch seam. Now we already have all the thread and the same stitch and everything, so we don't have to change that, but we are going to drop our cutting blade and we're going to get a seam gauge. I'm using the Bernina of Naperville seam gauge there, and I'm measuring a 1/4 inch to the right of my needle. And I actually measure it from the left side of the needle over. And then once I get that measurement, I attach this sticky clover seam guide so that I can kind of have something to butt my edges up to. And then I'm just going to sew my blocks together, making sure that as I sew them, they all point in the correct direction. And just fair warning, we do not want to sew the light teal strip until next month. And I press my seams to the gray embellished piece rather than pressing the seams open. And that's it. Our next lesson is going to premiere Friday, December 6th, and we're going to be adding our flying geese unit as the last section in our Quilt As You Go section 1. Well, what did you think about blending the thread? I think that was my favorite part about this month. In fact, if I can blend 2 threads together, why not 3 or 4? Because we all know this person that I try to be, a minimalist, wants to use all of the threads in one project, right? Well, hey, thank you for joining me this month. And don't forget, we do this again next month so we can quilt these flying geese units. So if you want to see more tutorials like this, you want to just see something funny, or maybe learn something every once in a while, check out our Bernina of Naperville YouTube channel. It's easy. It's youtube.com/Bernina of Naperville, and there you can like, comment, and subscribe. So all of you over quilters out there, get to it.